What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you my Polymorph warrior build for Divinity Original Sin 2 that I'm calling the Metamorph, after the preset, which is what gave me the idea for it. So, before jumping into the build, if you happen to like it after you watch it, I hope you'll consider joining the channel as a member. It's only $1, you get some cool perks, I get $1, helps the channel grow. Think about it. That said, jumping straight into the build here. As I mentioned, this is inspired by the preset Metamorph in character creation, which is basically the Polymorph skill tree, and it kind of pushes you towards finesse-based weapons like spears, but we're going to disregard that part. That's not useful. Finesse warriors are terrible. So, as for race origin combo, it doesn't matter. None of my builds that ever matters. I never try to base anything off of that, so this will work with any character you want to use. So, as for attributes, we're going to put everything into Strength, Constitution, and Wits. I find that in Act 3, there is an option to increase Strength by 5 at the cost of 5 Wits, and I recommend doing that because Strength is going to give us a lot more than crit chances in this particular build. So we pick up Wits for the extra crit chance, which brings us up to 26, which is decent for us, and we're going to get some good use out of that. And then you also, always have to put things into Constitution because you're going to need the Vitality. So moving on from there, for our combat abilities, we are going to put points into Warfare. We are going to put 3 points into Polymorph. Combine gear or, actual points into it, but you only need 3. You don't need more than 3. And then everything else into Two-Handed, and then the Two-Handed and the Warfare will give us tons. If you have any points left, put 1 or 2 into Scoundrel. The critical multiplier always helps with extra damage there, so feel free to put some extra points there if you have any left over. Civil abilities, of course, doesn't really matter for this. And then for talents, we're going to pick All Skilled Up, Comeback Kid, Executioner, Opportunist, Picture of Health. These are pretty much all standard melee warrior ones. Picture of Health gives us more health per warfare point. Opportunist allows us to perform attacks of opportunity. Executioner gives us action points if we deal a killing blow. Comeback Kid revives us if we happen to die. And All Skilled Up gives us extra combat and civil abilities, and I just really recommend that one. Now, if you don't want to pick Comeback Kid, say you're using the Ashen Idol of Rebirth on your character, and you're like, well, obviously he doesn't need Comeback Kid because I've got the Ashen Idol, then I would pick up something like Morning Person and or Mnemonic would probably be a good alternative in that particular case. So, moving on real quick, our armor, we're going to go strength-based armor because obviously we're putting points into strength, and most of what we need is like strength and warfare, which is all going to come on strength-based armor. Now, because of the way itemization works in this game, there are not specific items I can tell you to grab. Uniques do not scale to level without the use of mods, so while there are uniques that you can pick up in Arcs, which is the last act of the game, that are very good, like this Dora Rav. There's nothing specific I would tell you to get. Just focus on armor that requires strength, and you should pretty much be okay. Weapons, we're going to be using a two-handed sword or mace, basically, or battle axe. So there are spears, but those are finesse-based, so we're going to avoid spears, even though that is what the preset kind of pushes you into. Swords, maces, battle axes, that's pretty much what you're after. And of those, the best one you can find will do you fine. So, from there, we're going to talk skills. So, first up, we have Battering Ram, which is a warfare ability. You just charge, it knocks stuff down, pretty straightforward. Kind of a classic for the warfare. It is awesome. If the target doesn't have any physical armor left, you knock them down, which is huge in honor mode and tactician mode. You absolutely need to be taking turns away from enemies, which is why we also pick up Battle Stomp, which does some damage in a line, but again, knocks things down if they don't have any physical armor, as well as clears the ground of fire effects, anything like that all going on. Any terrain changing effect going on will be cleared by Battle Stomp. And then next up from the Polymorph tree, we're actually going to be using Tentacle Lash. So Tentacle Lash hits something. If it doesn't have any physical armor, it sets Atrophy. Atrophy keeps targets from physically attacking. They can still cast spells, but they can't swing a weapon or anything like that. And as you can see, the range on this is pretty good. So you can hit something and then ta-da, it can't physically attack the next turn. And then we're going to pick up Onslaught, which is a source ability from the Warfare tree. We attack 5 times very quickly, does a bunch of damage. It's just a really good damage attack. You can do a crap ton of damage with this very quickly. Next up, we're going to be using Skin Graft. So Skin Graft is awesome. It is a polymorph ability. It is a source ability that is very cheap to cast. And while it does remove burning, necrofire, poisoned, and bleeding, the main reason we're using it is because when you use it, it resets all of your cooldowns, which is amazing. And then next up, we are using Forced Exchange. Now, this is more of a personal preference on this one. If you're going to get rid of anything as far as these skills go, drop Forced Exchange. So exchange, you just exchange vitality percentages with your target character, provided they don't have any physical armor. So if you're about to die, that guy has no physical armor but a ton of health, you can use Forced Exchange to swap vitality percentage with them, which I think is really cool. But again, it's a little niche, so if you're gonna drop something, this is probably what I would recommend you drop. Polymorph also gives us awesome polymorph skills, as you might imagine. So one of my favorites with that is Medusa Head. So what Medusa Head does is give you a Medusa Head. Now the nice thing about this is when you cast it, you're immediately going to petrify enemies in a short area around you. But after that, it also grants you Petrifying Visage, which gives you a very large radius to attack enemies, do earth damage, and also petrify them. Now they have to not have any magic armor to be petrified, but the amazing thing about this ability is there's a lot of enemies throughout the game that straight up just don't have magic armor to begin with. So enemies like that, Medusa Head is like the bane of their existence. Because again, as soon as you cast this around them, the first time it will petrify them if you're near them. And then you can use Petrifying Visage to get enemies farther away if they also don't have magic armor. And it does do a bit of earth damage, but because we're not spec'd into that, it's not going to be a lot, but it will get some bonus from our strength because that's our primary attribute. And then next up, we are using Chicken Claw. Chicken Claw is one of the best stuns in the game. So it is a polymorph ability. If something doesn't have physical armor, you can hit them. It turns them into a chicken for 2 rounds, taking 2 of their turns away. It is an amazing ability. And then next up, we are using Spread Your Wings. Spread Your Wings sprouts wings and lets you move around the battlefield. Spread Your Wings, while cheap to cast, I find if you know you're about to get into combat where you need to move around the battlefield a lot, it's sometimes best to cast Spread Your Wings before the combat starts. Sometimes that'll help you out a lot, but it gives you a lot of mobility up and down terrain as well. So it just gives you a lot of mobility on the battlefield, and I prefer it to something like Phoenix Dive because it lasts for more than a couple turns. Like I use Phoenix Dive once, then it has a cooldown. I can't use it again without using like Skin Graft quickly. Whereas Spread Your Wings gives you wings for several turns and you can fly on every turn. So it just gives you a lot of mobility. If you decide to drop Forced Exchange, some things I would possibly recommend to you are something like Crippling Blow. Crippling Blow does a ton of damage. It's a warfare ability. It will cripple enemies if they don't have physical armor, which means they can't move. So very good there. You could also consider picking up like Heart of Steel or something, which gives you extra physical armor every single turn. You could use those instead of Force Exchange. Now, people looking at this might wonder why I did not pick up the Polymorph ultimate ability called Apotheosis, which requires Polymorph 5, grants you a ton of extra attributes, as well as reduces the source cost of abilities. The reason I didn't pick that up is honestly because it only lasts 2 turns, and it's kind of a pain in the ass to use because you don't even get it until the end of the game, and at that point your combat style is pretty much already dictated, which is why I just do not recommend using Apotheosis. It's an awesome ability, and if it lasted more than 2 turns, I would totally recommend it. But it's a lot of effort for not a lot of reward, in my opinion. That said, that's pretty much everything, guys. So as far as playstyle goes, this is pretty much a standard warrior with a bit more emphasis on absolutely locking people down. So you're going to do massive damage just because you have all this spec'd into physical damage. But then because you are not just doing warfare, but also polymorph, it's going to give you a ton of control over the battlefield. Now, Spider Legs is another cool one real quick before I wrap this up. And this is one of the few times I actually recommend swapping skills on a build consistently. If you know you are going to be fighting in a small area where there's not a lot of movement necessary, drop Spread Your Wings for Spider Legs. They're incompatible, so you can't use them both. But if you pick up spider legs, it'll let you web surfaces and slow enemies down by entangling them in them, which is obviously going to be better in a small confined area than spread your wings is. So keep that in mind as a final note. So there you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed the build. If you did, like, comment, subscribe. By all means, I love talking to people about this stuff. Let me know what you think of the build. If you enjoy it, I'd absolutely love to hear about it. But that said, I hope you'll consider joining the channel as a member. But even if you don't, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.